As we get back into the Nasdaq 100 and the SP 500, we need to talk about exactly what was happening on the day. We also had very critical news regarding supply chain on the economy. This could be extremely detrimental over the course of the next few weeks and possibly months. We're going to get to that later in the video. But before we get into all that action, I have to ask you to consider doing two things: liking and subscribing. Every single day I'm making these videos for you, a non-biased approach to the stock market, giving you the breakdowns and the news that will be coming out every single day, absolutely free. Let's get back into it. As we get into this, I want to start mentioning where you're at and what's happening. Now, I want to be transparently clear. On the day, I was looking for downside. I was looking for puts to the downside. And so as you got in here with myself, what I was looking at, I'm just going to give you a quick viewpoint. I was looking at puts from the gate basically this morning. So I started getting puts pretty early, around 9:18, 45 minutes into open. Our 380s for next Friday, they were 250 each. They quickly ran up to around 310, and then they dropped again after I cut some, got them again. End of the day, they went crazy. We'll talk about that here in a second, but that's kind of what we traded on the day. Not a super busy day, but it was green nonetheless. We haven't had green days here in a while, so we're really happy about that. Now, as we get back into what's happening and what we're looking at, I want to just show you where you're kind of basing on right now. So on the 1 hour, I want to highlight, this is really where I see us coming down to on NQ and ES as a hard support. So until we get below that, really, we don't expect a free fall. We don't expect a massive drop until you can get below 11.95 on Nasdaq. And then ES, we'll go over that here in a second. But I want to highlight this price action. So I'm just going to go to the 15-minute really quick and just show you what's happening as we get in here. And basically on the day, I compared this on Twitter to just not getting follow through. So what would happen is you would get a clear push like you got the other day down to these lows around 12.1, 12,100 on Nasdaq, and you'd bounce again, and then you bounce, and then sellers would step in, and then you bounce. And so what would happen is sellers would get in and push you down with volume, but then they would stop and get exhausted every time they touched these levels, right? And you can see it happening throughout today. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 touches of the 12.1 level. But on the other side of this, I want to also go over what was happening here. It's Nasdaq. Every time you'd get these sellers to step in, bulls would also step in and push you higher. But what would happen is you would get to levels and then they would just stop. And it's not that they would stop necessarily compared to the bears into where they would lose out or bears would just over dominate them on the selling side of it. They would just stop on the order book. There would just be no buyers there, and then it would stagnate, and then you drop, right? And so again, bulls stepped in, pushed you up. You had a quick drop here, one of your only really quick drops, and then you came back up again, and then you stagnate for almost, a few hours. And then what happens? You drop. And then end of the day, you come back down, you hit that level, bears stop once again, and you push right back up. And so you're seeing this volatile up, down, up, down, up, down. And you have a lot of people on Twitter and social media saying, oh, well, everyone's bearish, so we're going to go up. And I'm like, well, if everyone on Twitter's bullish, how is everyone bearish? That's food for thought in itself. But looking at this, you have to start recognizing what's happening. Now, there's a few things I want to talk about. You are not above your previous lows that you had established on September 13th, right? So September 13th, you had the initial drop in the morning, you bounced, and you came back down. Okay, so as you remain below 12.25, I remain bearish, right? So as long as you remain below this level, I anticipate a break to the downside. However, if you break above this level, I anticipate some more movement to the upside. Okay, so we have that established. I also want to address, I only have 2 of my SPY puts left. I just wanted to leave a few runners just in case. We'll get into that here in a second, but I want that to be transparently clear. I've cut most of that position as well. Now, as we look at ES, which are SPY futures, what's happening here? Little bit interesting stuff happening here as well. You actually are making lower lows. Very important to realize you are pushing lower. So you can see this is your low. Then you kind of make higher levels here. And then eventually you make a new low and then a new low here at the end of the day. And pop right back up to that level. And we're sitting there currently. Now you can also see you're nowhere near that level like you are in Nasdaq. So you actually have about 20, 30 points to go here in ES. Whereas on Nasdaq, you're basically there. Okay. So one, what do we know? We know SPY is weaker than the Qs, right? And we can also see when we get to these key levels, specifically on the sell side, when we get to this level, sellers just stop. So as we look at this, I have to say right now, it's looking like you want to get that push towards a little bit of upside. I'm not saying you're bullish. I want to reiterate that I'm not trading the upside right now. I'm just not. I just don't want to. But it looks like you want to get a little bit more upside happening here. That's what we're seeing right now. And then also here, my key level down here for ES is going to be around 3,900 to 3,880. That's going to be a very big support down there. So I'm really surprised we have not tested that level yet. However, you're still looking good right now for maybe potential upside. Now, as we look at that, and as we pivot into some of the other things, I want to cover SPY really quickly here as well. And SPY was a really good chart because it showed you what was happening on the day. So on the day, I posted this on Twitter as well. You actually have an ascending triangle. This is very bullish if you've looked at this, and you keep rejecting off this level around 395, 396. And I was actually going short up here. I was just like, I just kept throwing puts because you just weren't breaking. I was like, worst case scenario, you get above this, I just stop out. And eventually you broke down. Okay. You made a new low, and then you bounced here at the end of the day. Awesome. Cool. Right? So you're in this chop fest. That's what's happening. And it's almost like one of those, I always talk about those no trade zones, right? And so we still want to see that level push at 388, 390, but we just haven't got it. And so these are all important factors we need to be looking at because you're really in this chop zone. But I talked about some bad news that was coming out, and this is where things get concerning. We look over here, and we have a new major issue. Railroad Union in the United States is looking to go on strike, and this could be a massive issue for supply chain. It seems like supply chain can't get a break, and this would be the icing on the cake. On top of that, going into tomorrow, we have some interesting news coming out. Jobless claims, manufacturing data. Then we also have retail sales. It's important to know consumer credit was down last month. Important to realize. So as we look at that, those are some concerning factors in the works here. So we don't know how these are going to come out. PPI came out okay. It wasn't that big, and I think we can all agree PPI did not move the market. All right, it just stagnated. Spoiler alert. That's how we're moving right now. Also into this, I want to highlight what's happening here on VIX. VIX. Really interesting day. You had some drop, pop, going back and forth. You're still sitting above 24, 25. So again, you have to remain in theory that you're still going to see downside pressure just because based on the past trend that we've had above 24. Okay, going into junk bonds. Junk bonds, you had a decent day, and then they collapsed all the way back down. That's really concerning as well. I want to highlight this. We come in here, I want to actually use the open so you can see it every single day. This is very concerning to me. The fact that junk bonds pushed up, I was looking at this, I was like, actually pretty interesting, and you get rejected right at a key level and then pushed right back down. Junk bonds, super interesting. The fact of this risk on, risk off mentality here is still showing me that risk off is still the sentiment, specifically here at the end of the day when they dumped. Even with the bounce that you're getting right now, it's worth mentioning that. The biggest thing here with inflation, and that's the most concerning, is the US 10 to US 30. This is your 10-year bonds versus your 30-year. The best indicator on inflation that there is. What did I tell you on Friday? I said as you get stagnation here, typically what happens is you get volatility. And guess what? Volatility to the upside. This has been the ultimate indicator of inflation and a market recession / crash. Again, let me just zoom out really quick here. We've looked at this so many times, but if you're new, I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, right? So we have our COVID madness. Yeah, Donald Trump. What is going on here? Why am I doing this? It's infuriating. Okay, so we have what's happening here since COVID, basically. You have the 2018. This was not a recession, but I want to highlight this could have been very bad. But if you have that big drop in 2018, you can go back and look. You dumped it right around this time. Going back to the housing bubble right here, same inversion, boom, drop. And then going into the dot-com bubble, same thing. You're right there, but guess what? This is different than those times. You are trending up here. You're actually looking like continuation. You have a bull flag. Right? You are flagging towards the upside. You want to have more upside on this inversion. It is terrifying, in my opinion. This has been one of the best indicators for downside on a longer term scale. And it continues to go up, and it has been following this trend line for literally almost 3 years now. Terrifying. Okay, so we looked at that. We looked at the concerning parts, everything like that. Now I'm going to go into Bookmap and Cheddar Flow, and then I'll give you overall things I'm looking at tomorrow and what I'll be looking to trade. Looking here at Bookmap, I want to zoom out really quick to ES Futures and show you what's going on here. Now, CVD was a mess. You had your bulls, bears, back and forth, back and forth. CVD, don't really care about. The blue line is what I'm more interested in. This is your icebergs, your dark pool data. Beginning of this morning, 11 a.m., right around noonish, right? What started to happen? Beginning of the day, you get a little bit of buying. Pretty interesting behavior. Middle of the day, non-stop selling when you're at those highs, non-stop, downside, downside, downside. You see it kicking a little bit more as you go into the end of the day. And then at the last hour or so of trading, you saw a little bit of upside volume here, but not much. Sellers dominated the market, in my opinion, when it comes to dark pool, level 2 data. That's where it was dominated, in my opinion, setting themselves for longer term downside positions here. That's what I was looking at. Cheddar flow. What's happening here? We're going to look at Qs, the largest orders on the book. Qs, a lot of bearish behavior. They are blocks. They are not aggressive ones. That's worth mentioning. Going into SPY, what's happening here? Sweeps, a lot of them. Downside pressure, that's what they're pricing in. VIX, this was the most interesting. VIX, you are seeing a lot of out of the money calls coming in, betting on extreme volatility, 5,000, 6,800, 7,100. Lots coming in here. This is scary. This is concerning. Big money is betting on a big move, right? That's what we're looking at there. Last but not least, SPX. Kind of the least important in my opinion. However, again, you can see massive downside pressure. Okay, that's what we've been looking at all day. As we jump into this, as we go any further, I want to just highlight. I'm not bullish. I want to make that very clear here. I am not long-term bullish. You can get an upside pop here, but as you can see as well, you just can't get above the monthly. You can't get above this key level right here as well. And there's just so much in front of you. So until you can get above that, it's just like, why even try to trade that upside? It's just not worth it, not lucrative, not worth your money there, right? To the downside here, you have minimal downside to 12.1. You have about 150 points, very, very minimal, okay? So it's not really worth it there either. This is one of those areas where you kind of have to sit on your hands and wait for a break. If you break above this range, try to target some upside, right? Want to maybe get some upside at 12.5. If you get below this range, what are you looking for? Clear down shot all the way down to 11.9, 11.95. If you break that, it's going to get really ugly. But I also want to mention something that me and Jay were talking about as well on SPY. If SPY breaks below 390, I'm anticipating a world of pain. Bad, bad, bad. I think if we get below 390, we could see 384, 385 in a hurry, and that could lead to intense bleeding on the market. So I want to highlight that right off the bat. If you break below 390, be concerned, be aware, be safe, but that's going to be very dangerous. Looking at the market, I want to look at a few stocks as well before I let you out of here. First up, Tesla. Tesla, I mean, what a beast. I mean, that's all we can say right here, right? As we look at the day here on the 5-minute, really looking at today's price action, nothing but upside. You basically go from 292 all the way to 306. Still the best stock if you're trying to day trade. If pure stock, it's the best stock to day trade right now. Based on volatility, great movement. Looking here, if you can get any type of volume, you can get above 306. You have a lot of room to 314, possibly 320. Tesla's looking like a beast. Get back below the weekly. I'm targeting a push down very quickly to 296. So in clear, I want to make that very, very, very strong. If you push below this level, you push back down, break, retest. I'm targeting this right here. Entries, exits, that's what I'm looking at there. Next up, we're going to look at some of the weaker names on the market. AMD, semiconductors, big issues here. AMD is probably one of the weakest stocks on the market right now. AMD and Google, to be specific. If I'm looking at these, if I'd be looking at longer dated positions personally, but I'm looking for a retest of these local lows around 74 down to 72 in a hurry if we can get any type of downside pressure with NQ. That's what I'd be looking at, is that downside pressure. Make that very clear. Meta. I've been talking to you guys about this, and look at Meta. We mentioned it yesterday. You broke your lows from June, and you're already down at basically below. We get to 149 for a second. The big level here is going to be your COVID low at 137. I'm not going to say you're going to hit that tomorrow or the next day, but this is your big level, March 16th, 2020, your COVID low. Be on the lookout. Next level up, 142. Those are your two levels. Be vigilant and watch those levels because it's going to get spicy when you start to drop. Next up is Google. Google's getting there. Google's basically on the same track as Meta, but in my opinion, Google's beautiful. It's my favorite long-term stock that there is right now. I think Google long-term is beautiful. You get below $100, I'm starting to add it to my long-term portfolio. Yes, I'll be actually buying stock for the long-term finally. Now, you get below this, you can see downside to 97. I also want to highlight your major make or break point is 99.6. You break below that, it's going to get ugly. So watch out for that if you come down to this level. But again, Google's more of a watch for a long term for me. I love Google as a company. I think where they're going is in the right step, and they're focusing on the right parts of social media, and I think they're going to grow fast. I mean, look, you're here on YouTube. You're already they're one step ahead. Last up is going to be Microsoft, and I want to highlight this before I let you out. Okay, so you have your previous level right here. Go back to February 2021, and that's where you're finding support here. So what I'm looking at here specifically on the 1 hour time frame is a break back down to this level. Okay, and I'm not going to say you're going to get this tomorrow or the next day. You got to wait for some of these plays to play out. But you're looking for confirmation on indexes that will lead you towards the downside. Again, because what do I always say here? Indexes move your stocks. You need to stop being so hyper focused on your stock and be hyper focused on indexes. Because if you start to master the way indexes move, you're going to master the way you can trade, and you're going to be able to tap into these stocks before they even start to drop. Okay, indexes are your best friend. That's what's going to really make or break you. So what am I looking at here? I'm looking to see if you're going to hold below this level at 252 roughly. If you hold below this level, I want to see a few tests and a break back down to 246, 245. That's what you're looking at. This is a strong level down here. I think you're going to get a little bit of a bounce, but that's what I'm looking at in the near-term future. Microsoft is weakening right now. I'd be looking at that. Again, I'm not jumping into these plays tomorrow. I'm not jumping in them right now. I'm pretty liquid, actually. But as we're looking here, I'm waiting to see this breakout. If you start to break below these key levels, then I'm looking to take the shorts. If you break above, I'm going to look to probably trade or scalp to the upside. That's how I'm looking to trade. It's that simple. That's the game plan. If you have any questions, comment down below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.